The night sky is a quiet ocean, a vast, eternal sea where light drifts slowly and time almost seems to sleep. Every now and then, something stirs in that endless calm, a visitor from the dark between stars. It begins as a whisper, a flicker of light on a telescope's sensor, a faint movement against the backdrop of infinity. That is how astronomers first noticed 3I/ATLAS, a strange interstellar traveler that seemed to glide silently into our solar system, uninvited but impossible to ignore. At first, nothing seemed unusual. It looked like a comet, frozen dust and ancient ice, a messenger from another star system, like the famous Oumuamua years before it. But 3I/ATLAS behaved differently. Its brightness changed unpredictably, and its motion defied smooth orbital curves. It seemed to shift ever so slightly, as though reacting to something unseen, or perhaps controlling its own path. Scientists dismissed the thought, for space is governed by physics, not will, yet deep in their data, something was off, something subtle, something persistent. Weeks passed, and 3I/ATLAS drew closer to the orbit of Mars. Observatories across the world, from Chile's deserts to the icy peaks of Hawaii, turned their lenses toward it. And then for the first time, a pattern appeared. Around the object, faint points of light flickered into existence. They weren't stars, they weren't dust. They were moving, slowly, deliberately, forming arcs around the interstellar visitor. It was as if new companions had joined it, each following a delicate, repeating path. Astronomers thought it must be fragments, pieces of the comet breaking apart under sunlight. But when they mapped the orbits, they saw something astonishing. The fragments weren't scattering randomly. They were multiplying, geometrically. Every few days, more appeared, each one aligning into repeating spirals, like petals unfolding from a frozen flower in the dark. The data streamed into NASA's servers, and the models looked surreal. Around 3I/ATLAS, the new objects formed a lattice, a grid of movement, soft and symmetrical. To the human eye, it resembled a pattern, something almost deliberate. Some called it the Atlas halo, others the pattern of the wanderer. It didn't behave like a natural debris field. It pulsed, almost like a heartbeat, faint but consistent. People who listened to deep space radio frequencies reported odd distortions. The background hum of space, usually calm, began to echo in waves, slow rhythmic pulses that matched the comet's motion. To those sensitive to sound and rhythm, it felt like listening to breathing, long inhales and slow exhalations across the void. No one could explain it. No one dared to. Meanwhile, as days turned into nights and nights blurred into dawn, the world below slept under a silent mystery. Every few hours, telescopes detected flashes, like synchronized signals. The pattern was not chaos, it was order. A strange kind of harmony formed around the traveler. In a world already accustomed to scientific wonder, this felt different. It wasn't discovery, it was intrusion. Something had entered our system not just to pass by, but to leave a signature, a message, a design. For astronomers, this realization came slowly, like the awareness of a dream that begins to make sense just before waking. The universe, vast and indifferent, rarely draws lines or shapes on its own. Gravity sculpts, radiation scours, collisions scatter, but patterns imply intention. And if 3I/ATLAS was forming one, then someone, or something, was watching the stars differently than we did. Some observers claimed to see reflections within the halo, points of light that brightened and dimmed as though rotating surfaces were catching sunlight. A few scientists speculated that the new objects might be ice fragments catching solar rays. Others wondered if they could be artificial, probes or mirror-like fragments from an ancient machine. But the truth, as always, lingered just out of reach. Far beyond human noise, 3I/ATLAS continued to move silently, carrying its strange company of lights. The rhythm of its orbit aligned perfectly with patterns seen in ancient cosmic mathematics, the same spirals found in seashells, galaxies, and DNA. Nature's geometry was repeating itself around something not born of our solar system. The symmetry was eerie, beautiful, and unsettling. Every night, space agencies uploaded new imagery, and every morning, more objects appeared in the pattern. 12 became 24. 24 became 48. Soon, even amateur astronomers could detect them with small telescopes. The pattern was no longer hidden. It was expanding, wrapping the visitor in an ever-growing cocoon of light. Those who stared long enough into the data claimed they could sense a pulse, not in sound, but in timing, like the slow beating of an invisible heart. Every rotation of the objects around 3I/ATLAS seemed to echo at precise intervals. It was as though the comet, or whatever it was sending a signal, not to us, but to something waiting farther away. And yet, despite all of this, the world below went on sleeping. The mystery of 3I/ATLAS became a quiet fascination shared by a few scientists, night sky watchers, and dreamers. The media barely touched the story, and perhaps that was for the best. The deeper people looked, the stranger it became. They discovered that the pattern forming around 3I/ATLAS wasn't random at all. It followed ratios, the golden ratio, Fibonacci spirals, fractal repetition. Cosmic art drawn with precision impossible to explain. To see it mapped in 3D simulations was to glimpse something ancient and intelligent, as if the universe itself was sketching its own reflection through this interstellar visitor. Even the sunlight around it seemed to bend differently. Photons scattered in strange ways, creating halos of rainbow light. To the human eye, it looked serene, almost alive, breathing light and shadow in slow rhythm. In sleep, one could almost imagine it. A silent traveler surrounded by glowing companions, drifting through cosmic dust like a dream moving through the mind of the universe itself. The days that followed brought more questions than answers. The pattern around 3I/ATLAS didn't fade, it grew. Slowly, deliberately, like frost spreading across glass. Each new observation revealed additional orbits, smaller fragments appearing in sequences that felt timed, almost mathematical. The objects didn't behave like debris. They didn't scatter chaotically the way broken ice or rock should when released from a comet's surface. Instead, they moved in synchronized harmony, as if responding to an unseen conductor. Telescopes detected shifts in brightness occurring in perfect intervals, tiny pulses of light repeating across hours, days, and weeks. When plotted on graphs, those pulses formed wave-like curves, smooth, repeating, hypnotic. Some compared it to music written in light. Others thought of it as code. NASA's Deep Space Network began receiving faint, rhythmic distortions in the background static of their antennas. Normally, cosmic radiation and distant stars create random noise, hissing, uneven, unpredictable. But this was different. Every signal around 3I/ATLAS carried a repeating frequency, cycling precisely every 12 minutes and 47 seconds. It was too clean to be natural. yet too faint to be deliberate. It existed in a grey space between the known and the impossible. At first, scientists assumed it was interference, a reflection from solar wind bouncing off the fragments. But as more stations confirmed the same signal, the theory began to dissolve. The pattern wasn't local. It wasn't random. It was everywhere. 3I/ATLAS passed, echoing like a cosmic heartbeat. In observatories from Japan to Chile, astronomers began coordinating global sessions, pointing their telescopes toward the traveler at the exact same time. The results were mesmerizing. The synchronized signals aligned perfectly across continents. When one station recorded a pulse, so did the others. When plotted together, they formed a perfect spiral wave, as if the comet's light and rhythm were connected across the fabric of space itself. And in the still hours before dawn, when most of the world slept, data analysts stared at those waves, half mesmerized, half uneasy. The pattern didn't just repeat, it evolved. Every cycle seemed to add new sub-patterns, new details, like something learning, growing, remembering. A theory began to form quietly in the scientific community, whispered in private messages, discussed in encrypted calls. What if 3I/ATLAS wasn't just a comet? What if it was carrying something or someone? The question was dangerous, unscientific, even taboo. But the universe has never cared about our comfort zones. It presents, and we must wonder. Researchers compared the motion of the fragments to known celestial mechanics. The alignment didn't fit with gravitational expectations. Each orbit adjusted slightly, as though being corrected in real time. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but consistent. The objects behaved as if they were maintaining formation, and that, by every known law of physics, should not be possible for natural debris. In late August, an observatory in Spain captured the clearest image yet, the halo of 3I/ATLAS, glowing faintly against the void. Within that light, 7 distinct points orbited at equal distances, tracing a symmetrical ring. When the image was color-mapped to highlight radiation frequencies, a breathtaking pattern appeared, concentric ripples, like the rings of a pond disturbed by a single drop. But these rings weren't fading outward. They were converging inward, toward the core. Something at the center was drawing them closer, almost as if the fragments were returning home. Night after night, as the comet glided deeper into our system, strange electromagnetic readings began affecting satellites. Subtle power fluctuations appeared in high-altitude sensors. The readings spiked every time 3I/ATLAS rotated on its axis, as though it emitted bursts of energy too faint to see, yet powerful enough to be felt. Scientists mapped the timing of these bursts and found another astonishing pattern. The intervals matched orbital resonances found in planetary motion, particularly the ratio between Earth and Mars. It was as if the rhythm of this interstellar traveler was tuned to our own solar heartbeat. Coincidence, perhaps, but in the deep, contemplative quiet of the cosmos, coincidence and design can look remarkably alike. As days turned into weeks, the mystery deepened. New objects appeared again, smaller, dimmer, yet perfectly placed. The formation now stretched thousands of kilometers wide, like a vast web of glimmering dust and light surrounding the core. But the density wasn't random. It followed logarithmic spirals, identical to the geometry of galaxies and hurricanes. Even in its smallest details, the universe repeats itself. And now, it seemed, so did 3I/ATLAS. Those studying the data began to speak less about physics and more about pattern recognition, as though they were decoding a message hidden in motion. Every rotation, every pulse, every orbit seemed to form part of a larger whole, like letters in a word too large for human eyes to read all at once. And somewhere deep within that geometry, there was something familiar, something ancient. The spacing of the orbits matched ratios found in the spacing of planets, the structure of atoms, the rhythm of biological growth. It was as if the same universal blueprint had been stamped upon this interstellar visitor, a reminder that perhaps all of creation is built upon one great repeating code. Yet, amid the wonder, unease grew quietly. The fragments weren't just multiplying, they were stabilizing. Instead of dispersing into dust, they held steady, in perfect balance. Whatever was at the heart of 3I/ATLAS, whether a nucleus of rock or something far stranger, it was holding them together with precision beyond any natural process. NASA's official statements grew more cautious. Words like anomalous and unexplained geometric behavior began appearing in reports. Some agencies stopped publishing the latest imagery altogether. The public knew little, and those who did know spoke less each passing day. Still, amateur astronomers kept watching. They shared screenshots, light maps, and long-exposure captures that showed the pattern glowing faintly, like a flower blooming in the night. And for many, watching it felt oddly peaceful, even comforting. The pattern was calm, ordered, beautiful. There was no sign of danger, only curiosity, symmetry, and slow-motion grace. Perhaps that's why so many began to describe it in spiritual terms. They saw in it the universe's own meditation, a cosmic mandala drawn in the void, reminding us that even in chaos, there is order. Even in vast emptiness, there is design. Late one night, as the object crossed near Mars' orbit, the light around it changed. For a few brief hours, the halo brightened threefold. The faint glow shimmered like liquid silver, pulsing softly before fading back into stillness. Those monitoring it called it the awakening event. But no one could explain what had caused it. When the brightness faded, something new appeared in its wake, a cluster of tiny dots, moving in formation like a slow, deliberate drift. They were too small to identify, yet perfectly arranged. Whatever was happening around 3I/ATLAS, it wasn't finished. And as the comet slipped further from sunlight into the dim outer shadows of our solar system, the pattern continued to multiply. Slower now, steadier, but always precise. It became clear that this was not just a passing anomaly. It was an ongoing transformation, a dance of matter and light repeating a hidden cosmic rhythm. Somewhere beyond human comprehension, something was unfolding. And for those who stayed awake to watch, it felt like witnessing the universe itself, taking a breath, slow, vast, and eternal. As the days passed and 3I/ATLAS drifted farther from the warmth of the sun, the light around it began to soften, a faint luminescence that shimmered like moonlight beneath water. The once fiery tail of the comet dimmed into a slow, pale glow, yet the strange halo remained. Even from millions of kilometers away, telescopes could still detect the symmetrical movement of those orbiting fragments. They seemed untouched by distance or decay, as if held in an invisible embrace. Scientists began to notice something even more peculiar. The geometry of the halo mirrored ancient mathematical ratios. The spacing between each orbiting fragment matched numbers found in the Fibonacci sequence 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. The same patterns seen in seashells, pine cones, spiral galaxies, and the proportions of human DNA. The same design found in nature, now appearing around a visitor from another star. To those awake in the quiet hours of the night, this discovery felt less like coincidence and more like recognition, as though something familiar, deeply rooted in the structure of existence, was now unfolding before human eyes. In conference rooms filled with glowing monitors, astronomers argued gently under dim light. Theories emerged and dissolved like dreams fading at dawn. Some believed the pattern was the result of rotational forces and solar wind harmonics. Others whispered that it resembled ancient geometry, the flower of life. The sacred pattern said to represent creation itself. It was an uncomfortable comparison. Science and symbolism rarely walk together, yet around 3I/ATLAS, the boundaries seemed to blur. A few independent researchers began cross-referencing the comet's coordinates with star maps and deep sky surveys. What they found was unsettling. The pattern surrounding 3I/ATLAS aligned almost perfectly with the orbital harmonics of several nearby celestial bodies. Its rhythm echoed the timing of Jupiter's moons. Its spacing correlated faintly with the distances between certain pulsars. Even the light fluctuations from the fragments seemed to pulse in cycles that matched signals detected from interstellar space years before, signals that had never been explained. It was as if 3I/ATLAS was resonating with the cosmos, like a tuning fork vibrating to a hidden universal song. Late one evening, a quiet post appeared on a private astronomy forum. The user, who claimed to work in a small observatory in Argentina, shared a time-lapse image of the pattern spanning several nights. When compressed into a single frame, the orbits formed an intricate spiral, folding inward like a nautilus shell. Beneath the post, the caption read simply, "It's repeating something." But not for us. The post vanished within hours. As more data came in, some scientists began noticing that the center of 3I/ATLAS emitted faint heat, not from sunlight, but from within. Deep infrared scans revealed subtle warmth beneath the icy crust, fluctuating in intervals. It wasn't enough to suggest life or machinery, but it wasn't nothing either. The readings pulsed faintly, in perfect synchronization with the movement of the outer fragments. The heart of 3I/ATLAS was beating. In sleep, one might imagine it, a slow, rhythmic pulse deep within a frozen traveler, guiding its orbiting companions like planets circling a hidden sun. The pattern wasn't static. It evolved, breathed, adjusted. Whatever it was, it seemed aware. A few daring researchers began connecting these findings with humanity's oldest celestial myths, stories of the travelers or messengers that appeared in the heavens long before telescopes were invented. Ancient records from Sumeria, from the highlands of Tibet, from the desert carvings of South America, each spoke of lights that moved in patterns, sometimes spirals, sometimes circles, as if mapping a language of the stars. The similarities were haunting. Even the ancient petroglyphs, thousands of years old, mirrored the same geometry now orbiting 3I/ATLAS. Could it be coincidence? Or had humanity seen this before, across lifetimes, only to forget? Modern science avoids such thoughts. Yet, in the solitude of late-night research, when the data hums softly and the stars seem almost alive, even the most rational minds begin to wonder. Why now? Why this object? And why a pattern so precise, so impossibly beautiful, that it speaks the same visual language written into the spiral arms of galaxies and the shells of living creatures? The further it traveled, the more its orbit intertwined with cosmic resonance. It seemed to be mapping, or mimicking, the structure of something vast and hidden. The movement of each fragment corresponded not just with celestial mechanics, but with energy fields measured across deep space. Scientists began to notice correlations between the pattern's pulses and variations in cosmic microwave background radiation, the ancient afterglow of the Big Bang itself. No one could explain how or why. But if this was coincidence, it was the most astonishing coincidence ever recorded. Meanwhile, the world below continued to sleep, unaware that above them something extraordinary was unfolding, a pattern of light and order forming silently in the cold, dark sea beyond Mars. In the still hours before dawn, one might imagine standing on some distant hill, the sky above faintly glowing with starlight, and knowing that somewhere far beyond, an object from another star was writing its own quiet story in the language of geometry and rhythm. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't chance. It was something else, something ancient, something patient, something that moved with purpose through the silence. And perhaps, if the universe does dream, 3I/ATLAS was part of that dream, a gentle reminder that even across light years of distance, patterns repeat, stories echo, and the cosmos remembers. The deeper 3I/ATLAS drifted into the outer regions of the solar system. The stranger its light became. It no longer behaved as ordinary sunlight reflecting off ice and dust. Instead, it shimmered with an inner rhythm, flickering between wavelengths as though its very particles were breathing. Each pulse seemed to carry memory, a trace of all the stars it had passed on its long journey from beyond our system. Through long exposures, astronomers began noticing something remarkable. The faint halo that surrounded the comet did not scatter light randomly. It refracted it, bending and shaping it into faint spectral arcs that aligned with distant constellations. When plotted across the night sky, these arcs seemed to point toward ancient star patterns, many of which had been recorded by early civilizations thousands of years ago. At first, it was dismissed as coincidence. Space is full of alignments, and the human mind is built to see patterns where none exist. But the more carefully they studied the light, the more it refused to behave like chance. The bending, the reflections, even the timing of the pulses followed precise intervals that matched ancient astronomical calendars, cycles once used by the Mayans, Egyptians, and Sumerians to track celestial seasons. It was as if the rhythm of 3I/ATLAS resonated with the forgotten timing of the ancient world. When visualized on computer models, the halo formed a series of expanding spirals, each rotation correlating with precession angles of Earth's own axis, the slow wobble our planet makes over tens of thousands of years. How could a visitor from interstellar space know this rhythm, this slow turning of our world? There was no answer, only wonder. Scientists began overlaying historical star maps onto the comet's observed trajectory. To their astonishment, the alignments continued. At specific intervals, the comet's path intersected faintly with known ancient asterisms, patterns drawn long before telescopes, when humans still told stories to explain the heavens. To the ancients, such alignments were omens or messages. To the scientists, they were anomalies, too precise to ignore. And yet, amid the growing fascination, there was something oddly peaceful about it all. The pattern was not threatening. It did not accelerate or destabilize. It moved gently, like the tide, perfectly balanced between cosmic forces. It seemed almost careful, as though aware that it was being observed and responding with patience. In time, the scientists began to call it the Atlas resonance. It became a quiet obsession among a few, those who found beauty not in explosions or discoveries, but in the delicate hum of order, hidden within chaos. To them, the resonance was not just a physical event, but a meditation written into the universe. A reminder that even in the coldest regions of space, there could be rhythm, harmony, and intention. Late one night, an astronomer at the European Southern Observatory noticed something new in the data. When the frequency of the comet's light pulses was converted into sound, stretched millions of times to human scale, it produced tones that were hauntingly musical. Low, soft, and repetitive, like the ringing of distant chimes beneath water. The frequency shifted gradually, rising and falling in perfect symmetry. It was not random. It was music written in photons. Some listeners described it as peaceful, others as sorrowful, as if the universe itself were remembering something it had lost. The recording spread quietly online among researchers, then to artists, composers, and dreamers. Many who heard it said they could feel the rhythm within themselves, like a heartbeat slowed to cosmic time. Soon after, deep space probes began reporting faint distortions in their cameras. Images taken near the comet's path appeared to bend slightly, as though light itself were being delayed. Not by gravity, but by resonance. It wasn't measurable enough to confirm, yet the effect persisted. Light that passed through the halo of 3I/ATLAS seemed to linger just a fraction of a second longer than expected, like time itself hesitating before continuing. This discovery sparked quiet debate. Could the strange formation of objects around 3I/ATLAS be affecting space-time on a microscopic level? If so, what kind of energy or structure could create such an effect? The equations refused to fit. Even artificial satellites designed to study solar radiation found themselves capturing anomalies. Waves of soft light rippling outward, as if the space around the comet were trembling. In the dim glow of late-night labs, scientists stared at the data in silence. It was humbling. For centuries, humanity had looked at the universe as a vast stage of random forces. But here, in this slow-moving traveler, they saw a glimpse of structure, a calm, deliberate geometry woven through the void. Meanwhile, on Earth, something quieter began to happen. Observatories from around the world started to notice synchronized variations in atmospheric resonance, subtle changes in how radio waves bounced through the ionosphere. The pattern matched, once again, the same timing as the comet's pulses. It was as if the Earth itself had become part of the harmony, its invisible layers swaying gently to a music too deep to hear. In the small hours of the morning, when the world slept, a strange feeling filled the air. Not fear, not excitement, but connection. The stars no longer seemed distant. They felt close, breathing, aware. And somewhere beyond the reach of our instruments, 3I/ATLAS drifted quietly, surrounded by its multiplying companions, tracing invisible music through the dark sea of space. The longer it traveled, the clearer the pattern became. A reminder, perhaps, that the universe is not silent, only patient. It speaks not in words, but in waves and symmetry. And for those willing to listen in the stillness of night, the story of 3I/ATLAS was a lullaby from the stars themselves, a gentle, endless rhythm, teaching the cosmos to sleep and dream once more. As 3I/ATLAS drifted farther into the cold, outer regions of the solar system, the multiplying fragments continued their silent dance. The halo of light expanded slowly, tracing ever-widening circles around the comet. Each rotation, each pulse, seemed measured, deliberate, like a cosmic metronome. For those watching from Earth, the pattern no longer felt distant. It felt alive, as if the universe had taken a deep, patient breath and released it into space. The faint glow of the halo, once bright and noticeable, softened into delicate whispers of light. Observers began describing it as a veil, barely visible against the endless black, yet impossible to ignore. The fragments, multiplying and aligning, formed spirals that seemed infinite, extending outward in quiet perfection. It was as if the comet had become a painter, drawing with invisible ink, sketching patterns only the cosmos could fully understand. Scientists continued their measurements, converting light into sound, distance into rhythm. Every calculation reinforced the same truth. The pattern was neither random nor chaotic. It followed geometry so precise it echoed natural laws found throughout the universe: Fibonacci spirals, harmonic ratios, and resonant frequencies that mirrored galaxies, planetary orbits, and the structure of atoms. The same design repeated at scales incomprehensible to human minds, yet perfectly visible in the dance of 3I/ATLAS and its companions. Despite the complexity, there was serenity. No explosions, no catastrophic collisions, only movement, quiet and measured. The universe had painted a pattern not for observation, but for experience. For those awake at night, the comet became a meditation, a lullaby in light and motion. Each rotation whispered softly, observe, breathe, wonder. Gradually, the fragments began to slow their multiplication. The rapid emergence of new objects became less frequent, settling into a stable rhythm. The halo itself, once dynamic and ever-changing, now glimmered in gentle constancy. It was as though 3I/ATLAS had completed its work, leaving behind a structure that reflected the harmony of the cosmos. As the comet receded, astronomers noticed one final marvel. The pulse of light, faint as ever, synchronized subtly with both the rotation of distant planets and the deep frequencies of the cosmic microwave background, the ancient afterglow of the Big Bang. Across the vast distance between stars and planets, a single rhythm persisted, faint but eternal. It was a heartbeat in the dark. Amateur stargazers, those patient observers who stayed awake through long nights, began to see the pattern not as an anomaly, but as a gift. It was a reminder that order exists even in apparent chaos, that beauty can arise from solitude, that the universe, vast and silent, sometimes whispers in ways we can feel but not always explain. And then gradually, the light of 3I/ATLAS dimmed. The halo became faint, the fragments almost invisible against the endless black. The rhythm remained, too subtle to measure, yet the pattern endured in memory and in data. It became a story whispered among astronomers and dreamers alike, a story of symmetry, patience, and cosmic calm. In the deepest night, one could imagine standing beneath the stars, looking up at the heavens, and feeling a quiet pulse. It was not a warning, nor a message meant to be understood. It was simply the universe breathing, teaching those who watch and wait to notice the rhythm of its existence. 3I/ATLAS. The silent traveler from another star faded into the outer darkness. Its companions scattered slowly, tracing arcs and spirals that would drift through space for millennia. And in that gentle exodus, the universe remained unchanged yet subtly different. A tiny, perfect echo of harmony left behind in the void. For those who stayed awake to see it, who watched the pattern multiply and fade, the experience became a meditation, a soft reminder that even across unimaginable distances, the universe creates rhythm, symmetry, and beauty. That even in silence, there is music. Even in darkness, there is light. And even in emptiness, There is a quiet pattern, slowly, endlessly forming, waiting for someone to notice. And so, in the stillness of night, the story of three I/a TLAS ends not with a bang, but with a breath, a slow, calm exhalation across the cosmos, a lullaby from the stars themselves, leaving behind nothing more than wonder, quiet, and the soft echo of patterns in the dark.